grab your beverages and turn up your interweb. It's time for the Dudes and Beer Fantasy Football Podcast.
Fantasy freaks and geeks, what is up? It is week 13, and we are coming at you with the week 13 preview of the Dudes and Beer Fantasy Football Podcast. I am Matt McPeek. I'm here with Adam Nattress. We have a pretty awesome week ahead of us. For a lot of people, this is the last week of your regular season. Some people, your playoffs have already started with this week, and we got a full slate of 16 games to get through. So we're going to go through the cheers to you, pour one out first. Then me and Adam each have a daily fantasy lineup that we like. And then we're going to preview here on part one there's 7 games where both teams are in the NFC. So there's 7 of them, and it starts with the Saints at the Cowboys, which is the Thursday night game. So Adam, let's jump right into it with the cheers to you, pour one out section. And my first cheers to you is Christian McCaffrey, who had over 200 total yards and 2 touchdowns with 11 freaking catches.
The white wonder.
Devin Funchess didn't play, so I think that had a big part of why he got so many targets, but we'll see what that target share looks like going into this week. My next one is Amari Cooper. He had the best game of anybody on Thanksgiving, the 8 catches with 180 yards and 2 touchdowns. He looked awesome. My next is Cam Brate. He stepped in for O.J. Howard, and he scored a touchdown in the first quarter of that game. It's obvious that him and Jameis Winston have a chemistry, so I'm looking forward to that continuing here. And my last cheers is Sonny Michel, who, despite coming out of the game with what looked like a pretty gnarly back injury, he comes back in the second half and scores a touchdown, saves his day, had 20-something points. He looked really good, so I'm cheersing to you, Sonny Michel, as well. Adam, who do you got?
So I am looking at the new Eagles wonder, running back number 1, Josh Adams. Comes out of the gate strong. Prior to the game, Dougie P says he's going to get the workload. Quiet first half, a little scared, but boy, did he come out swinging in the second half. I love those power backs.
Yeah, I think it was like 6 carries in the first half, and then 18?
He just blew up in the second half. I mean, he looked good. He looked good. And cheers to the owners of Josh Adams if he continues this trend. Any waiver wire starting running back, get a nod in my book, which leads me to my next cheers of Gus the Bus Edwards. We can't call this guy Gus Bus. You can't have another running back with the nickname Bus, by the way, NFL and NFL analysts.
So he can be Gus Bulldozer because that's what he runs like.
It's not, it's not my fault that we already had the Bus in Jerome, but either way, powerful running style, especially with Lamar Jackson, another waiver wire wonder, looking good. 200-yard games in a row.
2 starting RBs that you got in the waiver wire in the middle of the season.
Right.
That's absolute gold.
It's happened before once, and his name is David Johnson. Let's not forget that. Andre Ellington was the number 1 running back for those historical fantasy nuts. And my last, and certainly not least, Mr. David Njoku.
Yeah.
Welcome back to life, big man.
Yeah.
Let's just hope it's not fleeting.
Yeah, you've been all over him all season, so I'm sure that felt real good for you to see him have a good game. I am pouring one out. My first one here is to Melvin Gordon.
One for my who.
Sprained his MCL. He's going to be out for a couple weeks on an absolutely ridiculous play that they never should have run. It's the problem with what the Rams are doing with all these jet sweeps and all this movement, and same thing with the Bears and the Chiefs. Like, now all these other offenses feel like they have to do the same thing. So let's run a reverse with Melvin Gordon, who we were worried about you having this knee injury pop up in the middle of the week, and you had to fight for your right to actually play in this game. So yeah, let's run a reverse with him. Real smart. So I'm pouring one out to you Melvin Gordon owners, and also the Jack Doyle owners out there who will not have him for the rest of the season either. 2 guys that got hurt this past week. I'm pouring one out for Jack Doyle. Also, the Bengals wide receivers, now that Andy Dalton is going to be out for the season, who the hell knows what Jeff Driscoll's going to do. So I don't know if you can really play any of those Bengal wide receivers except for A.J. Green going forward until we at least see, maybe this week we see something from Jeff Driscoll. But other than that, I'm staying away from him. I'm also pouring one out to you, Michael Thomas. He was averaging 9.5 targets a game through the first 9 games, and in the past 2 games, he's only had 10 targets combined. So his target share has gone down a lot. I'm also pouring one out to Greg Olson. 2 straight games with only 2 catches. Last week he was saved because one of them was a TD, but this week one of them was not a touchdown. So he had a horrible game. And the next one, who me and my buddy Kev from last week were pouring one out hard for, was MVS. This is another game where he only had 1 catch. So I'm probably dropping him in the league that I have him because I can't deal with that. So who are you pouring one out to for this week?
So real quick, just to pony off of what you said, as we poured one out for Melvin Gordon, we will cheers you, Austin Eckler owners. Congratulations, you hit the lottery.
Yeah, that's why you handcuff your running backs, people.
Jeez, man, I don't even want to get into that. But God bless you if you have Eckler and you are also a Gordon owner. And, this year's trend seems to be grabbing other running backs' handcuffs for yourselves,
right,
a la James Conner preseason.
Yeah.
So for the rest of you, good job. I'm pouring one out for Adrian Peterson. No more. The gutted offensive line with Colt McCoy. He's got a tough schedule to finish out. I don't think so.
Mm-hmm.
Deion Lewis. For a while, Deion Lewis looked like he could really be something. Turns out he's just your standard PPR Theo Riddick, if you will. Receptions only.
I think he's a little more than that. He's just not producing. 2 straight horrible weeks.
He's definitely more talented without a doubt.
Right.
It's just that coaching staff. I don't know. I don't have a whole lot of faith in Vrabel.
It's one of those puzzle teams. I just don't get them.
Nope. And then last but certainly not least, who I thought was going to be my wide receiver 3 for the year, Sterling Shepard.
Mm-hmm.
Where'd you go? Granted, I wasn't rooting for you on Sunday, but it would still be nice to see you actually produce something, buddy.
Yeah, especially with Evan Ingram mysteriously not being able to play in that game. You'd think Sterling Shepard would see a little more work, and he just didn't. So let's move to our daily fantasy lineups. I'll let you go first and see if maybe we have anybody who we're thinking the same way here.
So this week, a quarterback, I'm looking at one of 2 players because they're about the same price.
Actually, real quick, let me ask you something.
Yeah.
So when you look at like building, your main roster, if you will, because I know you play more than one lineup. Do you play the?
That's an understatement.
Do you play the Thursday through Monday slate where you can get every game, or do you only do the 1 p.m. slate?
I stick. So when you guys go onto the daily fantasy sites, you'll see on each site they have a main contest. I stick to the Sundays because that's where the main contest is. So FanDuel, for example's main contest is the 1 o'clock and 4 o'clock games. So those are what I speak to when we talk about this. Now, I do like to go 1 p.m. only, 4 p.m. only. I'll do afternoon through Monday.
Right.
But in terms of Thursday I'll do single games for Thursday, but that's just a long period of time. And I'm, eyes on the prize for the season-long stuff at this point. So, yeah, no, I stick to Sunday.
I like doing the Thursday through Monday, at least having at least one of those lineups, just because I feel like, the more games that you get involved, the more variables you involve, and,
you could survive a low score from a player.
Right, exactly. So, yeah, when I built mine, I'm thinking Thursday through Monday, but I see yours is pretty much just the Sunday afternoon slate.
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
1 and 4 o'clock games.
Yep.
Okay.
So, yeah, I guess when I'm reading to that I'm speaking to the main contest there on Sunday.
Cool.
In which case, as I said, for quarterback is the only position I listed 2 players. Jameis Winston and Kirk Cousins. One 7,600, one is 7,500. That's pretty bottom dollar price for a quarterback, or one of those 2. Jameis has got a good matchup against, that Carolina defense is very beatable, especially through the air and whatnot. I think he's going to be pretty good this week. But at the end of the day, I'm going to put this disclaimer out there. Every time we thought that the Bucs had something going with the quarterback, we've all been proven wrong. Mm-hmm. So if somehow we see Fitzpatrick out there in the second half, I'm not even going to apologize. I'm just going to say you should have expected it.
It's part of playing Jameis Winston, is knowing that he can get pulled at any point.
So running back though, I really like Philip Lindsay at 7,000. The Bengals have the worst run defense. So, and I also, you could see Denver getting up early and just killing the clock.
Right.
And then I don't see how you don't go McCaffrey. I mean, they're playing Tampa Bay. Dude just put up 41 some odd points.
Right.
I like Tyler Lockett this week at 6,700. Doug Baldwin's banged up. That groin injury might be a little more serious again. Adam Humphrey, 6,000. I mean, until this kid proves you otherwise, at that price, why not? And then DJ Moore, 6,400. He's the Panthers' number one receiver. I mean, Devin Funchess has been useless even when he was healthy for the past few weeks. For some reason, Cam chose this kid. So God bless him and God bless his price. And then, I got your boy David Njoku at 5,500.
Yeah, I saw he was real cheap.
Yeah. Yep. You know what? I'll take it because then I went for defense. I went the Buffalo Bills, 4,000. I also like the Colts at 4,200. Buffalo's defense, you never want to go too hard on them, but turnover-wise, they do get their turnovers. They get their points, and it's Miami. And then
it's Miami.
Right. And then to finish it off with my flex, because I've gone a certain stack, you'll see I'm living and dying with Jameis this week by going Mike Evans.
Okay.
In my flex. I'm hoping it's an air out Jameis Winston type of day.
Cool. Yeah, I see you kind of have like a little mini Buccaneer stack and kind of like a mini Carolina Panthers stack. I'm actually going heavy with a Chargers stack. I got Phillip Rivers at 8,300. I feel like they're going to be throwing the ball a lot more without Melvin Gordon there. Alvin Kamara is my first running back at 8,600. I feel like the Cowboys defense, they're really good against the run, so the Saints might need to throw the ball to their running backs a little bit more, and Alvin Kamara definitely gets targeted way more than Ingram does. My next running back is Aaron Jones for 7,600. He's got a top 3 RB matchup. And then, like I said, with the Chargers stack, I got Keenan Allen going. I think it's going to be a high scoring game, so I'm hoping that we see a lot of Rivers to Allen. My next wide receiver is Emmanuel Sanders at 7,000. Again, he's got a great matchup against Cincinnati.
I also don't know who else to throw the ball to, apparently.
Exactly. So, the other two guys, as we'll get into that Broncos game, but the other two guys are not getting any targets at all. It's pretty much all Sanders.
It's bizarre.
My third wide receiver is Corey Davis for 5,900. I like the value. I like the matchup against the Jets. I like the fact that he's clearly the number one there, and he's getting the lion's share of the targets for the past few weeks. I really like him. Cameron Brate with the Buccaneers, $4,900 for the tight end with the best tight end matchup in football this week.
Oh yeah.
And as we said earlier in the Cheers to You section, it really seems like Jameis likes him. So $4,900 for a tight end that I feel like has as much upside as any tight end in football right now. That's an easy value for me. The only other guy that I saw that had as good of a value was Eric Ebron. I think was like 5,000 or something, which is ridiculous considering the fact that Jack Doyle's gone now. And then the last piece of this Charger stack, I got Austin Eckler for $5,400. A starting running back for $5,400 is pretty awesome.
That's a great point. I mean,
yeah. And then my defense is the Colts. They're playing the Cody Kessler led Leonard Fournette-less Jaguars. And the Jags have been an awesome team to prey on for DSTs over the past few weeks anyway. So the fact that they're now rolling with the backup quarterback and a group of running backs that, they are what they are. They brought in Carlos Hyde for a reason because they didn't believe in TJ Yeldon, and they haven't been giving any work to Carlos Hyde for a reason because he's not Leonard Fournette. So I'm not worried about that.
And there's no predictability with there's just no predictability.
Plus, they fired their offensive coordinator, so we have no idea what they're going to do. So,
and real quick, I did want to point out because I know I mentioned the Bucs stack, and you brought up Cameron Brate. I want to just give a quick "this is why" and my reason why I didn't go Cameron Brate because I'm actually going to get into that game in a little bit. And you mentioned, Panthers are the worst against a tight end. Mm-hmm. One of the things in daily that I try to do for certain positions is take the less owned person. And I think.
Sorry.
No, I get people choked up all the time with this theory. It's all right. Listen, I get it. It's out there. So in this situation, right, I think that I go with a little bit lesser owned person if I think that they might be able to get the same production and then switch it up elsewhere. That's why I went Njoku this week, because I think that the Cameron Brate secret is out. They've yet to hike his price, which I still don't get.
That's why I looked at it and I was like, what? 4,600?
Like, you could just go, you can use so much more elsewhere with that. But what worries me with that is the ownership. Now, granted, if he comes out and catches 3 touchdowns, F me. I'm wrong. You don't have that 3 touchdowns elsewhere from you lose, because 50% of the people do. Your boy David comes out and maybe gets another 3. Well, he only had 1, but still. So that's why I went that way. I just wanted to explain myself when I was talking about a Buccaneers stack versus that matchup, just so people can kind of understand why I switched specifically on that one spot.
Do you think that maybe Mike Evans will see more than Cameron Brate? Like what made you want to switch out the tight end spot instead of going with Brate and then being able to spend up more at wide receiver?
So the reason I switch out the tight end spot is specifically towards that number one, worst in the league versus the tight end. The whole thing with Cameron Brate right now, he's a hot name. His price is insane, and they're the worst against the tight end.
So he's going to be played a lot.
I think that's going to direct a lot of attention to him.
Right.
Now, again, if he kills it and you don't have him, sorry. You shouldn't have listened to me. But if it's average, and I think you'd be surprised. I think we're going to see less people owning Evans, more on Humphreys. Now, I do have Humphreys in my lineup. But once you get to that wide receiver position, there's just so many of them that, very few are hugely owned. The tight end crop, though, is just so slim this year. That's where people can load up on the same person, essentially.
Right, I gotcha. Cool. All right. Well, why don't we get into the Thursday night game here? We got the Saints going to play the Cowboys in Texas. Both of these teams are coming off of a Thanksgiving Day win. Cowboys defense has been playing really well. But, I mean, it's not like any defense is going to scare you away from playing any Saints. So you're going to continue to play Breeze and Kamara and Ingram and Thomas. The thing that I think is going to be the wild card here is which one of these wide receivers for the Saints is going to come up big. We've seen it for the past 2 weeks. This kid, Austin Carr, he only had the 1 target, but I mean, he caught it for a touchdown, and it's been 2 weeks in a row where he's had a touchdown. Last week, they had 4 undrafted players catch a touchdown. So we had Austin Carr, Tommy Lee Lewis, Keith Kirkwood, and good old Dan Arnold.
Drew Brees is a magician.
He really is, dude. It's ridiculous. Like, I mentioned Michael Thomas's target share and how it's gone down over the past couple weeks, and this is why, because they're 6 targets to Dan Arnold, 3 targets to Keith Kirkwood, another 2 targets to Austin Carr and Tommy Lee Lewis.
He throws it to who's open. It doesn't matter what your name is, and
they were all open in the end zone, so he's going to hit you. It's just. I feel like...
So what you're saying is this is a Bubba Watson week?
And all of this is with Traquan Smith, who's been their best rookie wide receiver out of all these guys. Well, I think
he's
2 of them are rookies, and we don't know if he's going to be healthy. He's had 2 touchdowns in his last 2 games. He's obviously, you look at his splits, he's a lot better at home, and the next 3 games are on the road. But
and they drafted him for a reason.
If he's going to be the top one of these, the wide receiver 2 here, and if Michael Thomas really is going to continue to see less than 10 targets a game, those targets have to go somewhere. So I would consider playing Traquan Smith if he is active, but. Like I said, this Cowboys defense has not been playing bad at all. They give up the 4th fewest fantasy points to wide receivers, so it's not a lock, but it's a dart throw. On the Cowboys side, Dak has been great, Zeke has been great, Amari Cooper's been great. We talked about him. We cheers to Amari with his great game, and he should continue to see 8 to 9 targets a game, especially with the tight end Swam out, or however you say his name. If you look back at Des Bryant's targets over the past couple years, it's been between 8 and 9 a game. So you got to assume that's at least what Amari Cooper's going to get. So you can continue to play those big three, Dak, Zeke, Amari. I'm staying away from Gallup and Beasley until they show me more.
I don't think there are enough targets to go around to try and pinprick that third. Because one week it'll be Gallup, the next it'll be Beasley. If you don't have a big three in those Cowboys, I'd be very weary. Yeah,
they run the ball way too much to have any consistent target share for any of the other two wide receivers. But the Saints are giving up the most fantasy points to wide receivers. So again, fire up Amari Cooper. He should be pretty good here, especially in a game that should be I don't want to say high scoring because I don't think it's going to be one of these 30 to 36 games, but the Saints are going to put up points because they always do. So let us go down to the NFC South. We got the Panthers playing at the Buccaneers. Jameis Winston is going to remain as the starter. And
so we'll see, right?
Yeah.
We'll see.
Until the second half, right, and then we'll reevaluate.
Let us not forget I think maybe self-entitled, maybe ESPN nickname of Fitzmagic, and then all of a sudden it was Jameis. So we'll see. That being said, this game right here is an interesting one. I mean, it's got all the makings of a shootout potential. Mm-hmm. However, the Panthers are phenomenal at killing the clock, it seems. Like, that offense, just the way they operate with McCaffrey out of the backfield, they could chunk you for 5 yards a pop, or they could, in theory, dice it down to DJ Moore. We're not really sure how that's been operating. He came out of left field, but if you have McCaffrey, I don't even have to tell you to start. Anybody that puts up 40-plus points, 200 yards total, you start every single week.
Yep.
Cam, you have to start every week. Actually, Tampa's defense is awful.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they're third worst versus the quarterback.
And tight end.
Yeah, I was going to say, and the tight end, and then they're the seventh worst versus the running back, sixth worst versus the receiver. So, I think if you have Greg Olsen,
you give him one more shot here because of this matchup. I guess it depends
on if you somehow got one of those streamer tight ends, good for you. But I think you give Greg, maybe this week he catches a touchdown. Someone's going to. I mean, it's going to be a shootout. They're going to be throwing that ball left and right.
Right.
So I'm starting DJ Moore. I think you have to at this point.
Yep, 9 targets last week.
You know what I mean? Yep.
Especially if Funchess is out.
I'm going to I wouldn't even worry if Funchess is in at this point. I think Cam likes this kid a lot. I mean, they drafted him for, again, a reason.
So you're starting him whether Funchess is in or out?
I'm starting DJ Moore no matter what. And then I'm going to put a 50-50 out there on Greg, depending on who your backup is. Just because he's had prime matchups that they just haven't gone to him in. Out of nowhere, Cam just doesn't go his way. And then, obviously, McCaffrey. Now, on the other side of the ball, Jameis. The Panthers are the 6th worst against the quarterback. Jameis had a nice week last week, high projections this week. The thing is, though, is that the Panthers are average against the receiver. You know what I mean? They're 13th worst. I don't know, but there's a lot of firepower on that offense, so I'm definitely going. In fact, I am starting Jameis. I told you guys all that already, season long as well. And then I'm definitely starting Mike Evans. I'm starting Adam Humphries. Mm-hmm. And I think you got to start Cameron Brate for your season longs as well. I mean, I think you got to start each one, especially with the Panthers, as we highlighted, being the absolute worst against the tight end. So I think, the one thing the Panthers are good at is their run defense. The one thing that the Buccaneers really aren't that good at, on a rare occasion it will happen, is running the football. Peyton Barber's been hit or miss. That ball's going to be in the air, left and right, sideways, backwards, frontwards. So, that's actually going to be my stack this week, is that game. That's one of them at least.
Yeah, I'm staying away from Peyton Barber because of that 9th-ranked Panthers run D. And I just think they're going to be scoring so many points. They're not going to have any time to be running the ball.
It's going to be a pinball. I wouldn't even be surprised, though, to see some defensive touchdowns, too, just because when the ball's in the air that much, we don't have elite accuracy here. So this game is going to be an absolute shootout.
Even for the DSTs, maybe.
Right.
Yeah. Next game we got here is the Cardinals at the Packers. Both teams coming off of a loss. Freaking Aaron Rodgers, man. So last week I played him and I had Lamar Jackson on my bench, and I would have never thought in a million years that Lamar Jackson would outscore Aaron Rodgers, but he did, because Aaron Rodgers only completed 17 passes, had under 200 passing yards, and he only had the one touchdown. He missed that touchdown in the fourth quarter to Devontae Adams.
Yeah, he's been underwhelming.
Yeah, he really hasn't,
Not for where you had to take Aaron Rodgers, because it's Aaron Rodgers. But he's been underwhelming the past few weeks. Like, if you had a backup, like you said, there are a lot of times where that would have been a better play. It's just hard to do that when you have Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, the only league that I have Rodgers in is that 0RB league that I did. I think Rodgers was my 4th or 5th pick. And, he's still a top 5 or 6 quarterback, but he's not 1 or 2 like I was expecting him to be. So Aaron Jones, you're playing. The Cardinals defense gives up the 2nd most fantasy points to running backs. They've been the running back matchup that you want to exploit all season, and here it is for you, Aaron Jones. So go out and play well.
He's become a must start anyways.
For sure. Jeez, sorry. Then, as I mentioned, Devontae Adams, you're going to keep playing him. Obviously, the one that I'm staying away from is MVS. I'm staying away from St. Brown. It's
Devontae or no one.
Yeah, it's the receiving core is just not strong enough to support playing any of them. You can only really trust Devontae. And, even when you look at the tight ends, like Aaron Rodgers targeted the tight end position 8 times the other day.
I would like to take this opportunity to bring us back. If we can all rewind to, it might have even been before week 1, you boys on this podcast specifically said,
speaking to the softness
of
Jimmy Graham,
about drafting Jimmy Graham where he is going, playing with Aaron Rodgers. And what was that one thing, Matt? That Aaron wasn't going to throw to him because he doesn't throw to soft people. And guess what?
It happened.
It was one call.
Yeah, so that pretty much does it for the Packers. And on the Cardinals side, you can really only play David Johnson and maybe Larry Fitzgerald just because he's been catching so many touchdowns lately. But, the Packers are giving up the 4th most fantasy points to wide receivers, but I can't trust Christian Kirk. There's too many viable wide receivers this week with 16 teams playing. You don't need to play Christian Kirk. And honestly, if you have better options than Larry Fitzgerald, I would go with him too, because I have a feeling that the Packers are going to get up early and it's going to start to look not so great for Josh Rosen. I don't think he's going to have very much time to be throwing the ball. So that does it for that game. Then we got here the Bears playing the Giants, who absolutely just handed your Eagles a win last week. So congrats on that.
No Saquon in the second half. That was incredible.
Yeah, let's not use our best player.
I appreciate that, because if you were to boil down last week's running backs per quarter, what Saquon did in that first half, he actually was better than McCaffrey. They just didn't give him the ball in the second half.
Yeah.
That was insane. Anyways, so speaking of that Giants defense, Trubisky was just, he did the hot hand. He was killing it. So the Giants they're good against the quarterback.
Apparently they
understand.
They're not sure if he's going to be able to start this week. He missed Thanksgiving, and apparently Matt Nagy today was saying that he's not sure if Trubisky's going to be able to play again. So
my guess is
might be looking at Chase Daniel again.
See, this is the one thing with the NFL though. Like, I was pretty positive that half the reason he didn't start last week is because it was a 48-hour turnaround between game time.
I think less than that.
And I think Matt Nagy's using that. Oh well, we're not sure if we're going to play this kid. Hey, I could see Trubisky coming out and playing. You never know. And if it is Chase Daniels, I am shying away from almost every player on that Bears offense.
Yep.
That's what you got to pay attention to. I mean, the Giants are, they're the 8th best team overall versus the quarterback. Secondary is actually okay, but they are the 11th worst, to the running back. So does Jordan Howard come back alive this week because it's Chase Daniels? Is it Tariq Cohen because Chase Daniels can't throw the ball? He did look okay for some of those passes last week. I got to be honest.
He
did dice.
He didn't look like Trubisky, but he didn't look like
a backup quarterback playing the Vikings.
No, exactly.
So,
no, it was the Bears.
The Bears. No, I'm saying Chase Daniels was playing.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, they were playing the Lions.
The Lions. I'm sorry. Getting all twisted here.
Yeah.
I apologize, everybody. Regardless, though, Chase Daniels does give you an air of I'm not sure. The Giants play the wide receiver very well. They're the 7th best. So I think I'm going to lay off of the Bears offense. I guess even if Trubisky's healthy, you just never know. If he is healthy, though, they were playing really well against good defenses, too. So sometimes it can be a crapshoot depending on how hot the guy is. But let's assume it's Chase Daniels for a second then. I'm laying away from that. They are the 16th worst against the tight ends, but we've never seen any consistency from Chicago with Trey Burton.
The Bears are who we thought they were.
Yeah, 16th worst. That's you're dead center,
even.
So you're not good, you're not bad.
Right. Dead center of the pack. Other side of the ball. Sterling. Come on, man. What are you doing? Where are you? I had high hopes for you. I'm laying off. He's on the bench. This is in theory, the Bears against the receiver, that's the one place they're really, I guess you could, if we're going to use the word beatable against that defense, in theory, it's the receiver. They're the 3rd best against the quarterback. Eli can't handle pressure. So they're probably going to be back there all day.
Mm-hmm.
You start Saquon. If you have Saquon, I know the Bears defense.
It's Saquon and Odell.
Saquon.
That's it.
That's it. You really just, outside of Saquon and Odell, you can't do anything else with that game. So
you can like the 6 targets that Red Ellison is getting, but this Bears defense is too good. I'm staying away from anybody that's not named Saquon or Odell for sure.
From both sides of the ball at this point.
Yeah. Moving on to a NFC West matchup, we got the 49ers playing in Seattle. 49ers coming off of that loss to the Bucs. Seahawks with a big win against the Panthers, putting themselves in good position to make the playoffs there. For the 49ers, we saw Pierre Garçon and Marquise Goodwin were both not active for this game. Goodwin for personal reasons. Garçon was injured. And we saw this dude, Dante Pettis, come in and get 7 targets, catch 4 of them for 77 yards and a touchdown. That's great, but I'm not trusting that. The only players on this offense that I'm starting is Matt Breida and George Kittle. They have come out and said that Nick Mullins is going to be the starter again. So,
what's his name? CJ Beathard will be starting that game, I think, halfway through.
You think so?
I think Mullins is on his way down quickly.
Yeah, he threw 32 passes last week.
I don't get that.
That's a lot. But yeah, George Kittle is great, and he got 12 targets of those 32. That's a lot. So it's a bad matchup here for George Kittle because the Seahawks are giving up the 8th fewest fantasy points to tight ends, but Kittle is just so involved in their offense, you can't sit him. He's great. And one big thing here, the Seahawks allow the 6th most receiving yards to running backs. So if this wide receiving core is going to continue to be so unreliable and inconsistent, maybe we see Breida's usage in the pass game go up. He's only averaging 3 targets a game, but I can easily see that go up here against the Seahawks, considering that covering wide receivers out of the backfield is not something that the Seahawks do very well. And looking at that same concept against, for the Seahawks, the 49ers allow the 7th most receptions to running backs. So maybe we see the running backs a little more involved in the pass game for the Seahawks as well. Another thing to keep in mind here for all of you Chris Carson owners out there, apparently J.D. McKisson was activated to the 53-man roster. So I really hope after this week we're not looking at a 4-headed monster here. 3 heads is too much as it is. So hopefully the Seahawks, don't bring him in and try and use him on offense. I'm really hoping he's just more of a
special teams
kind of guy. Yeah. But like I said, with the 49ers giving up that many receptions to running backs a game, maybe they look at that and say, this is a great way to get McKissick back involved a little bit. Russell Wilson, you're starting. 49ers are in the top 10 for most fantasy points given to quarterbacks and wide receivers. So you're starting Tyler Lockett. I'm staying away from Doug Baldwin until we know what the hell's going on with his hamstring. It's, he starts off the season saying it's not good. Then halfway through the season, he says he's okay. And now it pops back up. He's clearly lost his role as the number 1 target there for sure. Lockett and David Moore each got 5 targets last week. They each put out 100 yards and a touchdown. So Baldwin is no longer Mr. Reliable there, and Russell Wilson is definitely targeting these other 2 wide receivers. I think both of them are playable. For the running backs, I'm still rolling with Chris Carson. I have him in 2 of my leagues. 16 attempts last week, caught 2 balls. He was kind of saved by a touchdown. Wasn't really great with his yardage, but again, the Panthers' run defense is pretty good, and that's who they were playing last week. So I'm kind of shaking that one up to that. I'm really hoping that Chris Carson comes out and shows that he is definitely the number 1 receiver there. Quick stat for Russell Wilson in regards to his rushing. He's had 21 yards on 8 carries in the last 2 games, which is not very good. His rushing has been very inconsistent this year. There was like a 2 or 3 game stretch where he was running the ball quite a lot. I think the one game he had like 100 yards. But I'm not looking for him to have a big day with his legs again this week. The 49ers actually allow the 5th fewest rush yards to quarterbacks. So that's one thing that is kind of looming over my head in regards to Russell Wilson. We were kind of talking earlier before we started the podcast. I have a pretty tough decision between him and Lamar Jackson this week. I think it's going to come down to the wire for me. I don't know what I'm going to do.
That's not a tough decision, Matt. A tough decision is my team where my 3rd wide receiver is a choice between Doug Baldwin and Sterling Shepard. That's a tough decision. That's a pick your poison.
Yeah. Well, hey, the 49ers are giving up the 7th most fantasy points to wide receivers, so maybe Doug Baldwin is the better way to go.
Maybe he's faking that injury too. That's not. He's a step too slow with that hamstring.
Our next game here is the Washington Redskins visiting the Philadelphia Eagles. I know you're excited about this one, so what do you got?
So, what a win, huh? I'd like to take more pride in that, but let's be fair here. The Giants, again,
They blew it. I
just don't get how you don't give this kid that was on pace for like 60 fantasy points the ball. But whatever, okay. We'll take the victory. So, this is an interesting one we got this week. You got Colt McCoy at the helm for the Redskins. You can't start Adrian Peterson. There's a hollowed offensive line. I mean, in theory, you could start the Redskins wide receivers. Those should all be good starts. Josh Doxson should be a good start.
Because of how bad this Phillies pass defense has looked. Holy crap.
Right.
Giving up the 2nd most fantasy points to wide receivers.
That's what I was going to say. But here's the thing. Like, they've been bad against the quarterback, the 7th worst against the quarterback. They are 3rd best against a tight end, though. And so, I mean, I guess that would rule Jordan Reed out. You never know when to expect Vernon Davis anymore.
Right.
But at the end of the day, the offensive line for the Redskins is hurting. I could see the Birds getting pressure on Colt McCoy. But we know no blitz Jim Schwartz, the Eagles' D coordinator, doesn't adapt in blitz, as I mentioned. So, yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure nobody or very few people have the Redskins receivers rostered as like you're choosing to start them over somebody. But I guess if you're in a position like myself with a Doug Baldwin, Sterling Shepard situation, Josh Doxson could really be a decent choice.
10 targets last week.
Decent choice. That's probably the one guy I'd feel most comfortable taking a look at from that Redskins offense. Anybody else even him. I mean, it's all dart throw when you're that banged up. You can't run the ball well. Adrian Peterson hasn't, even with his 2 touchdown game, that really wasn't as good of a game as it appeared to be from a fantasy statistics side. 4 weeks in a row, less than 70 yards. I think that he's done. So, yeah, from the Redskins, just Josh Doxson this week. I mean, I guess if you have Jordan Reed, you might not have another choice, but there are some streamer tight ends I'd probably look to first because the Eagles, again, defensively, somehow that's what they're good at, is playing the tight end. Go figure that one out, Matt. And go figure, they got rid of their coverage linebacker going into the year, yet somehow managed to figure out how to cover tight ends. Beyond me. Let's talk Eagles offense, shall we?
Okay.
So the Redskins are the middle of the pack, basically. 13th worst against the quarterback. I think Carson's on the come up. I know I'm a homer. I know I've said that before, ladies and gentlemen, but he did look better last week, especially being able to run the football. The Redskins' run defense is the 10th best in the NFL. They're a good run defense. But you know what they're not a good run defense towards? The power running back. there's not that many power running backs in terms of, a true starter anymore. But those that have diced the Redskins up pretty good. They can't handle the power running back very well. Maybe because they're not used to it. I'm not sure. So I'm liking Josh Adams this week. I think he'll get a couple catches. It looks like they're committed. Not as committed as they claim, though, because you still see Corey Clement on that field quite a bit. But I like Josh Adams this week. Again, Redskins are 5th best versus the tight end. That doesn't matter. If you have Zach Ertz, you start him. He is a wide receiver, or he basically is a wide receiver 1 every week with the amount of targets he gets. And then here's the interesting thing for that game, for that side of the ball. It's the Redskins are the 10th worst against the wide receiver. There's been no consistency towards, other than Zach Ertz, who is catching that football from Carson Wentz. Alshon has not necessarily looked good week to week. They don't have anybody to take the top off and stretch the defense. So you can see it when the defenses are covering them. I mean, if you have Alshon, you start him based on the matchup this week. I don't know what we're going to see from Golden Tate. They claim they're going to try and keep working him in. But really, your locks are Ertz, Wentz, Josh Adams, and you're going to start Alshon.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun game to watch because pretty much whoever loses this game, I think it's over for them in the NFC East. Whoever wins actually has a shot at catching the Cowboys, especially if the Cowboys, lose to the Saints
I hope
this
they
week.
get slaughtered.
Yeah. So the last game we have here for part 1 is the Rams playing the Lions. This is a pretty easy game here. Obviously, Gurley, Cooks, Woods, Goff, Rams defense even are all locks for starts. The one wild card here is Josh Reynolds. He's had 3 touchdowns in his last 2 games. With Cooper Kupp out in the 3 games that Reynolds has played, he's gotten 6 red zone targets and caught 3 of them for touchdowns. So I think he's stepped in as a red zone target for them, kind of what Cooper Kupp was in the beginning of the season too.
Right.
And we were talking about it all season about how this is one of a few offenses that can support 3 legitimate wide receivers that you can play in, your wide receiver 2 spot all season long. And I think, if
somehow that team is supporting almost 4.5 wide receivers between throwing the ball to Gurley and the random times the tight ends step up.
Right.
It's kind of hard to fathom.
It's an amazing offense, man.
They're
so
good.
Much fun to watch.
Yeah, I think Goff's got a good week ahead of him.
Yeah. The Lions defense here, they're giving up the 9th most fantasy points to running backs, and that they've gotten gradually better. As we mentioned last week with Snacks Harrison, they've gotten a little better each week, but doesn't matter. Gurley's the best, and he's going to eat them up. So
if someone's going to bench Gurley, and they were right for doing that, please, again, call in, give me the lottery numbers, like whatever you got to tell me, I'm listening.
You are the fantasy god if that's what happens. The big thing here is, we have Marvin Jones going on IR, so that kind of locks Kenny Golladay into the number 1 receiver there for the rest of the season. All you Kenny Golladay owners out there, enjoy his massive target share that's going to be coming towards him. And then Kerryon Johnson, whether he's going to be able to start this week, he's dealing with that knee injury that kept him out of the Thanksgiving game, so we're going to keep an eye on his availability here for that one too, because the Rams are not very good against running backs. They give up a ton of yardage, not much touchdowns. But Kerryon Johnson should be a pretty safe start for you if he's able to play. If he's not able to play, LeGarrette Blount got 19 carries last week.
That was absurd.
20 total touches with 2 touchdowns. And he played very well against the Bears defense, which is one of the best run defenses in the league in Kerryon Johnson's absence. So I think if Kerryon misses again, for any Kerryon Johnson owners out there who's struggling to fill that RB spot, with Kerryon out, I think you can rely on LeGarrette Blount and even Theo Riddick here, who's gotten, if you're in a PPR league, he's got 7 targets last week. He's averaging 6.5 targets a game. And again, with Marvin Jones going down, those targets have to be dispersed elsewhere. Yeah, they got Bruce Ellington, who came in last week and had 7 targets, but he caught 6 of them for only 28 yards. So it's not like they're targeting him down the field or anything. So I think you can count on Theo Riddick as well in a PPR league only, though. I don't think you can really count on him if you're in one of those standard leagues. So So that does it for part one. Me and Adam are going to take a short break here, and we're going to come back and do part two, which is all the rest of the games. It's all of the games that have both AFC teams involved. And there's two games that actually have an NFC versus AFC here. It's the Vikings at Patriots, and the Ravens at Falcons, which we will start with in part two. So come back with us. We are back with part two of the Week 13 preview of the Dudes and Beer Fantasy Football Podcast. We're starting here with the Ravens at the Falcons. This is one of the best, if not the best, defense against one of the, if not the worst defenses in the league. Ravens coming off of that big win against the Raiders, and the Falcons lost to the Saints on Thanksgiving night. For the Ravens, if Lamar Jackson is the starter, I'm starting him. The threat of him rushing is just too awesome. Like a dude who has a floor of maybe 75 rush yards and 150 pass yards with the possibility of a touchdown. That's a floor of about 12, 13 points.
Yeah.
And he has a ceiling of 100 plus rush yards with a touchdown and 200 pass yards with a touchdown.
And more importantly, at this point, too, I don't mean to cut you off, but Joe Flacco is essentially at this point in time, and has been since that miracle run he had with the world's best defense. Let's not forget that. Joe Flacco reminds me of and every city has a team like this at some point in their history. I'm referring to this one based on me being a homer. The 2010 to till the process started Sixers, where he is the essential quarterback version of that team that almost makes the playoffs or barely makes the playoffs every year, but then gets slaughtered. There's nothing exciting about Joe Flacco. Year to year, he's never done anything where you're like, oh, Joe Flacco might have a game. If you're the Ravens, why not start Lamar Jackson? Joe's not doing it for you anymore. I don't know how much more of a picture you got to paint.
You moved up to draft a dude in the first round. He's gotten 2 wins for you. He brings a new element to your offense.
You can finally run the football for once.
You can run the football for sure, which brings us to Gus Edmonds, 23 attempts last week. 2 straight weeks with over 100 yards. You're starting him, obviously, like we were saying. He's one of these RB1s that just crept up in the waiver wire here. It kills me because I was heavily invested in Alex Collins, but I have made my peace with it and I've moved on. So again, Lamar Jackson it's obvious that he really likes targeting his tight ends. The tight end position caught 6 of 7 targets for 120 yards and a touchdown for them last week. So unfortunately, though, it's too inconsistent, and you can't count on any of them. So
you can only refer to it as the tight end position.
Exactly.
You have no idea who's going to be on the field.
I think maybe next year we might be looking at Hayden Hurst because they invested so much in him. But for this year, it's just they're too inconsistent to really rely on. One interesting thing here is the Falcons give up the first and second most receiving yards and receptions allowed to running backs. So Ty Montgomery last week, he had 3 targets. Those were the only running back targets for Lamar Jackson. But, they brought in Ty Montgomery for a reason. Maybe that was something that they felt like they were lacking in the offense. They wanted to get a little more production out of the pass-catching running back because Buck Allen was, I think his career average is like 2 yards a catch or something. So maybe the Falcons, because they give up so much points to pass catchers coming out of the backfield, maybe they try and bring that a little bit more into their offense. So maybe Ty Montgomery is playable in a PPR league for any of the 12 teamers out there that's hurting for an RB. One thing here that's also in favor of Lamar Jackson is that the Falcons allow the 7th most rush yards to QBs, and they haven't seen a quarterback like him. So I think we could be very easily at the end of this week looking at the Falcons as giving up the most rushing yards to quarterbacks.
Which is crazy. If there's one franchise that should know how you defend a rushing quarterback, it should be the franchise that basically invented it with Michael Vick.
Yeah,
Come on, guys. Where were you?
And as I said, the Falcons defense is just absolutely putrid. They're in the top 5 for everything as far as fantasy points allowed. So fire up all those Ravens. and have fun rooting for that team in Baltimore. So for the Falcons side of the ball, it's the complete opposite. The Ravens give up the fewest fantasy points to running backs and wide receivers, and they give up the third fewest to quarterbacks. So, you're still starting Matt Ryan because he's been so great, and he's on a team that has a horrible defense, and they can't really run the ball that well. So they're stuck just throwing the ball nonstop, like the Buccaneers. So I'm starting Matt Ryan, I'm starting Julio, and I'm starting Calvin Ridley too. 13 targets last week. Again, if they're losing big time, they're going to have to throw the ball just like they were on Thanksgiving night. So if we're going to see 13 targets to Ridley and 14 targets to Julio like we did last week, I think you can start either one of them.
You ever notice with these good defenses too, like that second receiver, as long as they're talented, is always that sneaky option. Like whenever a team with a decent quarterback is playing someone like the Ravens, maybe the Ravens one of the few teams though that can defend both, but it's always that second receiver that just ends up having a day. I could see Calvin Ridley really having a day,
especially when that number one receiver on the other side is Julio Jones. So yeah, I think you can fire both of them up this week, even though the matchup is horrible. Moving on to the Buffalo Bills playing the Miami Dolphins.
Well, you just don't know what to expect from that Bills team week to week.
No, you don't.
They've got more obscure wins and worse losses. Like, I've never seen anything like it.
They beat the Jaguars. They beat the Vikings.
They smacked the Vikings.
Yeah.
And
then they destroyed my Jets, which
right.
isn't saying much, but still, it's just they are probably the most inconsistent offense by far.
It is bizarre. I've never seen a team do this. Like, because, by all accounts and purposes, that Buffalo Bills team should be right there with, they are bottom of the barrel, but some weeks they're just not. I just don't get it. However, that being said, this week they are playing the Miami Dolphins, another team that's been harder than El Nino to predict as it's about to just hit. I don't get it. You're not going to start. You don't have the Bills. The Dolphins are the seventh best versus the quarterback, but does that really matter? Do any of you actually have Josh Allen?
No.
And if you do, you are dead last. The one player from the Bills you start is Shady. The Dolphins give up the sixth most points to the running back, and at the same time, he's their offense. When he's
their best player,
when he's
by
killing
far.
it, they're killing it.
Mm-hmm.
He's really the only. He's really the only guy. The Dolphins are terrible against a tight end, but that doesn't matter.
They don't really have a tight end,
right? It just
Charles Clay has disappeared.
Strictly LaShawn McCoy from the. In fact, if there's been something different you've done this year and another player from that team you've started consistently, we'd like to know. If you've started somebody else from that offense, let us know. Flipping to the other side of the ball here. Boy, Kenyon Drake, man, I'll tell you what, he came out like a bat out of hell. And we've seen this. Kenyon Drake actually has, interestingly enough, you see some of these RB2s on this list, right? Up until recently, Adrian Peterson, some of those guys. And you think this year, Kenyon Drake's not there. But then the games that he does work, he kills it. It's just that you don't know when that's going to be. There's absolutely no rhyme or reason. And for some reason, Frank Gore is still technically the running back one on that team.
Yep.
Maybe this week we'll see, Adam Gase finally acknowledge again that, hey, maybe this kid should be the running back. As long as the shoulder, I know he's had shoulder problems before. He looked like he was in serious pain, but if you don't have another option, I'd start Kenyon Drake. Again, I apologize if they only use Frank Gore. You never know, but he's definitely your best bet. The Bills that's their one weakness. Really, as a defense, they give up the 10th most points to the running back. They are the best versus the quarterback. So, take that for it's Tannehill. So take that for what it's worth. I don't know if you're starting. I don't know if there's a receiver on that team that
to me it's Drake and that's it.
That's
to me the only two players you can start in this matchup is McCoy and Drake. They're the two best players that have the best matchup here. They're the two most consistent players, I feel like.
Well, I think that's it. It's that the rest of the team, and even we can't use the word consistent with Kenyon Drake either, unfortunately.
Well, He's been consistently,
when given the chance, he's consistent.
Yeah, I mean,
that's the
6
problem.
targets. If he's going to get 6 targets, and I mean, last week was different because they were playing the Colts, who are absolutely atrocious against pass-catching running backs, and that's actually, I want to ring my bell a little bit because last week I did kind of call that. I was saying Kenny Drake should actually be pretty good last week because the Colts are absolutely atrocious against pass-catching running backs.
He really does catch those. He does get a lot of targets, but at the end of the day, there's been no rhyme or reason to when they use him.
Yeah.
And that is the most frustrating. It seems like every other one of those muddled backfields, not named Seattle, to be fair, that doesn't count because they're all basically the same talent, have straightened out, right? Like at the beginning of the year, we talked about Detroit. We didn't know what was going to happen with the Colts and, with the Dolphins, we figured. Well, here we are. And we still have Frank Gore leeching.
Yep. Yeah, speaking of the Colts, they're playing at the Jaguars. Like I said earlier, Cody Kessler is going to be starting at quarterback. Leonard Fournette was suspended. He appealed. It was upheld, so he's not going to play.
Thanks, Leonard.
So Andrew Luck is a beast. The Jaguars, their defense is not what it was, man. They're not getting anywhere near as much pressure on the quarterback as they were last year. Their sacks are down. Their turnovers are down. It's just the defense is not that great anymore. I mean, it's not that it's not great, but they're just not the number one dominant defense that they were last year. And Andrew Luck has been absolutely awesome this year. Last week, 30 of 37 for 343 yards, lots of threes there. He also had 3 touchdowns. And again, another stupid play call where you had Andrew Luck running a pass route, and Jacoby Brissett threw the ball to him like a moron. So hopefully the Colts can stop doing that dumb crap so we don't see Andrew Luck get injured here. I think Marlon Mack, if he's out of concussion protocol and he suits up for this game, I think you can play him just because of how high-powered this Colts offense is. Yes, the Jags are giving up the 5th fewest fantasy points to running backs, but I think Marlon Mack, 15 carries, 85 yards last week. If he didn't get that concussion, he probably would have gotten it into the end zone there at the end of the game. If he misses, Nyheim Hines should get targeted a lot, should catch a lot of passes, just like he did in the few games that Mac missed earlier in the season. T.Y. Hilton, you're obviously firing up. He's on fire. And this Jaguars defense, as I said, is just not playing the same. And with the Jack Doyle injury, Eric Ebron should also have a good game here. He got targeted 7 times last week with Doyle on the field. So without him, he should see that same target share that he saw while Doyle missed in the beginning of the season. So I think Eric Ebron can easily be played as well.
Hey, hats off to the Colts real quick, by the way, for figuring out, 6 years into Andrew Luck, that if you maybe
get him an offensive line,
protected him even just a bit, he'd be awesome. Well done, guys. Way to figure that one out.
Yeah, they gave up a sack last week for the first time in, I think it was like 5 games or something ridiculous.
Meanwhile, for the rest of his career, he was the most hit quarterback.
Yeah.
Must be nice for him now.
He must have went from the highest sack quarterback to the lowest sack quarterback real fast. And for the Jaguars, obviously you can't start Fournette because he's going to be suspended. So keep him out of your roster. I think the only viable plays are Carlos Hyde and TJ Yeldon. TJ, if you're in a PPR league, I think has a little more playability here. And for Carlos Hyde, he got 10 carries in that game, and he got a goal line carry right after Fournette left. They weren't able to score there, but it was good seeing that they were going to give him the ball on the goal line. So with the volume and just with how much the Jaguars run the ball, I think you can get away with playing Carlos Hyde in one of your flexes for the week. It's just, we just don't know what to expect from that offense with a new quarterback, without the number 1 running back, with a new offensive coordinator. So we'll definitely keep an eye on that one. Moving on to the next game here, we got the Browns playing the Texans. I know you've been on Baker Mayfield and Nick Chubb and David Njoku, so I'm going to let you roll with this game. What do you got going on for this Browns Texans game?
I'll tell you what, this Texans team has been all over the map in terms of, their defense, for all intents and purposes,
Pretty damn good.
Pretty damn good. 6th least to the quarterback, 9th least to the running back, 5th least to the receiver. There's only one place that they are, in theory, weak based on their statistics, and that would be
the tight end.
The tight end. Now, that being said, though, to be fair, you saw what Cleveland did last week, right? A team that's playing like that, I mean, you're going to start Nick Chubb. So I get that the Texans defense is good, but at this point, you have to start Nick Chubb.
A running back that's getting 30 touches a game? Hell yeah.
Right. There's going to be a handful of people that are going to go for Baker. That would be where I lay off, personally. There's 2 players on that team I would start, Chubb and Njoku. Outside of that, I mean, Baker could come out and kill it. That kid's got more confidence than any human being you've ever actually seen. I don't know if you saw that one play where he was running, like hiding the ball, and he looks like he's playing flag football half the time. The other half the time, they're terrible. So I'm sticking Njoku and Nick Chubb.
Yeah, I mean, he's never seen a defense like this. You're going to get J.J. Watt and Jadeveon Clowney on the line, and
right. He probably thinks to himself, "Oh, I played against Alabama in college." Well, you got J.J. and Jadeveon, buddy. Yeah. But you know what? Chubb is a big boy himself, so if they can get him going, it's going to take a lot of pressure off Baker. Good luck. But, you have to start Chubb. You have to start Njoku. On the other side of the ball, we saw Cutie. He got hurt. I don't know what his status is this week, but
he's questionable now.
I don't think it matters anymore. I think last week we saw what we were hoping for, which was the emergence somewhat of Demaryius Thomas. Mm-hmm. That could be a question week to week, only because obviously the second wide receiver on that team has been a carousel since Fuller got hurt.
Right.
There's only one person Watson's truly comfortable throwing to, which would be DeAndre Hopkins. I mean, the Browns do give up the 11th most to the wide receiver. You're starting D-Hop no matter what. And quite frankly, he's probably going to have a heck of a game. I mean, the Browns defense just hasn't. They're just middle of the pack. I mean, they're middle of the pack pretty much across the board, except at the running back position. And to you Lamar Miller owners, man, where did that come from? Where's this guy been?
97-yard run.
Right. For 9 years, we heard that he was going to break out. Who would have thought that at the age of God knows what, he actually did? I think this week he could have another good week. Statistically speaking, I could see them getting up relatively early and just, killing the clock. So
yeah,
I guess,
unfortunately, with that train of thought, which is what was going on last week, Alfred Blue came in and got 13 carries. So he finished the game with one more touch than Lamar Miller.
But that happened 2 weeks ago too, or 3 weeks ago too.
Yeah.
But it's like, I don't know if it's Alfred Blue or if it's when they're giving him the ball. It just seems.
I think when they're up, it's Alfred Blue, and when they're when they're up big, it's Alfred Blue, and I think. Throughout the rest of the game, it's Lamar Miller. He's been able to kind of lock down his spot.
Start him with confidence.
Yeah,
I guess you could say within the past few weeks, and unless you have a better option, I mean, there are some really good running back matchups this week. Unless you have one of those real good ones, if you're hurting or you're choosing between Lamar Miller and maybe a question mark like an Adrian Peterson, I'm going Lamar Miller. I mean, even with Alfred Blue there, he still seems to be better than that bottom half of the pack. And they're at least going to try to get him going. So I would start Lamar. I guess you're starting Deshaun Watson.
Hell yeah, 70 rush yards. That one play that he had where I think it was a 40 or 50-yard run. That's why you play these quarterbacks that have legs, because that was a 10 or 11 point play just there. You know what I mean? So
especially a guy that gets to throw the ball to D-Hop. That guy's a beast.
He's really only throwing the ball like 24, 25 times a game, but he's efficient and he's got playmakers to throw the ball to. And with those legs, I have Watson in one of my leagues, and he's been locked into my my quarterback spot because. Like I said, he's
really good in a traditional scoring league, especially that has 4 points for a passing touchdown. Mm-hmm. I've got a league where it's 6 points a passing touchdown, so his value is actually a little bit lower because, like you say, he's not chucking the ball as many times as the other guys.
Right. Moving on to the Broncos at the Bengals, as we said, Andy Dalton's out for the season, so Jeff Driscoll's going to be playing here. To me, that kind of makes it pretty easy here. You're starting Mixon, and if AJ Green plays, you're starting AJ Green. But besides that, I think it's kind of killed Boyd and John Ross's status here, unfortunately. And the other guy here that is just such a conundrum, CJ Uzomah. He got 13 targets last week, and he only had 40 yards. So you look at this matchup here, and actually it's pretty favorable for the tight end position on both sides of the token. But, the Broncos are dealing with some injuries themselves. They just lost Jeff Hireman for the season. So I don't know, if you can count on any tight ends in this game, even though they both sides have good matchups here. The players for the Broncos that I'm starting are Phillip Lindsay and Emmanuel Sanders. Lindsay, like Gus Edwards, they just look different running the ball. They're so explosive. Lindsay had over 100 yards last week.
He should feast.
He should feast, yeah. And Emmanuel Sanders, 12 targets. He just keeps leading this team by targets, by leaps and bounds. He's obviously their number one target there. So looking at the Bengals defense, giving up the most fantasy points to running backs, I think Phillip Lindsay is definitely a lock for this game for sure. I know you were saying you have him in one of your in your DFS lineup, and he should be pretty damn good.
I do want to put one caveat to that gaming and the receiver comment on the Bengals. Tyler Boyd going back into the slot if AJ Green is healthy, he could be. That's where he thrives. And with a guy like Jeff Driscoll, who we don't really know, I would keep an eye on that. If AJ Green is healthy, it will increase Boyd's value because he'll go back to the slot where he belongs.
Okay.
At least I hope so. Because remember when I said pick your poison between Baldwin and Shepard? The third guy to that mix would be Tyler Boyd. So it gets even worse for me, at least. Yeah, God, what a 3.
Yeah. I'm looking at the next game here. Sorry, I kind of screwed us up. I went a little out of order. My bad. I'm looking at this Jets-Titans game. The Titans defense is really good, man. Giving up the fewest fantasy points to tight ends, and right now the best, I think the best player for the Jets is Chris Herndon. He got 8 targets last week, which is a lot for a tight end. So unfortunately, you can't play him. Jermaine Kearse, 12 targets last week for this Jets team, but it's their offense is just so bad, and we don't know what the quarterback situation is going to be. And this Titans defense is so good, so you can't really play any Jets for this game, which really sucks. The Jets are just so bad, breaks my heart. But looking at the Titans here, obviously, Mariota, you can definitely play here. Last week had 300 passing yards with 2 touchdowns, so if he can do that again, it should be pretty good for you. In PPR leagues, I think you could still get away with playing Dion Lewis. I'm not playing Derrick Henry. I'm staying away from him. He's just been way too inconsistent. The best matchup here for anybody is Corey Davis playing the Jets defense, who gives up the 8th most fantasy points to wide receivers. As I mentioned in my daily fantasy lineup, Corey Davis is obviously the number one threat there, the number one receiver. He's getting all the targets, and with this horrible Jets pass defense, I think Mariota and Davis can go in there and carve them up. So I'm looking at those 3 players really as the only playable guys in this matchup here. The other guy that I was interested in, was Jonnu Smith, but only getting 2 targets and playing the Jets defense, who is actually not that bad against tight ends. They give up the 5th fewest fantasy points to tight ends, and for a tight end that's only going to see the ball twice, he had a 61-yard touchdown reception, but if it wasn't for that, his stats would not look very good for last week. So I'm staying away from him as well. Moving on to the next game here, we got the Vikings playing at the Patriots. This should be an awesome game. This should be a high-scoring game. Two defenses that really are not all that great. The Vikings defense has been playing a lot better lately, actually. I shouldn't say that, but, you never really start Patriots. You never sit Patriots. They're must-starts pretty much every week. You're looking at Brady, Sonny Michel, James White, Gronkowski, Edelman, and Gordon. They're all guys that you can't really get away from just because of what this offense can do at any time. Sonny Michel with 21 carries last week, 133 rush yards and a touchdown. He's looked like an absolute beast. James White, he kind of got saved with his rushing production because in the past game he caught only 1 of 5 targets for 5 yards. And one thing that I saw, Rex Burkhead is now back off of IR, and he's been activated, so he can play Sunday. So,
you know, ladies and gentlemen, you know that no matter what Sonny Michel is doing, Bill loves to have like 6 random running backs, and just good luck.
Hopefully, this is another thing, as we were talking with J.D. McKisson being activated with the Seahawks. Maybe this is just a special teams booster type of thing. But, I mean, considering that they've had Cordell Patterson getting 5 rushing attempts for the past couple weeks, you got to figure that with Rex being active, he's going to get some work. I think the number one fear for all Sonny Michel and James White owners is they get down the goal line and here comes Rex Burkhead.
Here comes the vulture.
So hopefully that doesn't happen, but I think you can still play both of them just because of...
I think you have to.
James White, maybe he's more playable in a PPR league than he is in a standard league, but I mean, for a dude who was getting so many targets throughout the season, and he's definitely still the trusted running back there, as much as they love Sonny Michel. So that does it for the Patriots. The Vikings, you're obviously starting Adam Thielen and Diggs. I mean... 20 targets between the two of them last week. They both had a touchdown. They're both awesome. They're both number one receivers. You're going to play both of them no matter what. Kyle Rudolph actually saw a pretty big increase in his targets last week. He caught 7 of 7 targets for 63 yards, and this Patriots defense is giving up the 5th most fantasy points to tight ends. So I think that should be a pretty good matchup there. And Cousins, I think you can start too. The Patriots are in the top 10 for most fantasy points allowed to quarterbacks as well. So a dude who's throwing the ball, 30 to 40 times a game, 340 passing yards with 3 touchdowns last week. I think you can definitely play him again. It's the question mark here is the 2 running backs for the Vikings. Obviously, Dalvin Cook is the guy who I think is more owned and has a lot more people counting on him, but he's getting out carried by Latavius Murray. I mean, it happened again last week. Latavius had 1 more carry than Dalvin, and he produced more yardage with that 1 more carry. Dalvin, however, was used in the pass game, caught all 3 of his targets for 47 yards and a touchdown. So obviously that's what you're hoping for from Dalvin Cook, obviously, is being consistent in his production in the pass game for sure. Moving on to this next game, we got the Chiefs coming off of a bye playing at the horrible Oakland Raiders. 2 bad defenses here. I'm guessing you're seeing a shootout just like I am.
I don't see any way around. Well, you know what? The only way around it, though, is you can't necessarily put a shootout mark because the Chiefs could get up so quickly by 3 touchdowns that they could just Kareem Hunt and Spencer Ware that ball for the rest of the game.
Right.
But, yeah, I mean, you're starting Tyreek Hill. You're starting Mahomes, obviously. He's the best fantasy player right now.
Kareem Hunt, Travis Kelce.
Right.
Yep.
I guess your question mark could be Sammy Watkins. It's hit or miss if he plays.
Or whoever's going to be the wide receiver,
right.
too, yeah.
At this point, it might even be better just to stay away from that a little bit, because if he does play, he'll probably be on somewhat of a snap count, or you never know how they're going to work that.
Yeah,
especially playing like the Raiders, who are a very bad team. They're not going to force anything.
Or not last week, 2 weeks ago, Sammy Watkins was active.
Decoy.
He came in and he played, I think it was like 6 or 7 snaps, and then he left. So
I think your best bet is to stay to your core. If you have part of that core, good for you. They've been killing it nonstop. I'll flip to the other side of the ball. I mean, I didn't even go over Ravens statistics defensively because I don't need to. You're not questioning those guys. You're Travis Kelce. I mean, you're talking about the top tier of each spot almost. It's ridiculous.
Yep.
It's wild. If you have to start anyone from the Raiders, I mean, Jared Cook has a good matchup.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really know if that really matters. There have been good matchups for him in the past. It's just that offense is just such a disaster. In theory, you could go Doug Martin, but again, they're going to be behind, so then it probably should be Jalen Richard.
Yep.
And that's where I think the sleeper in this game comes from. Jalen Richard could be a guy that if you're hurting at running back, you might want to look at. He's going to get his targets. He gets his targets pretty much weekly if it's a PPR league. again, outside of maybe Jalen Richard or Doug Martin if you're stretching, and Jared Cook.
There's really nobody else with this
Right,
Raiders
and even
team.
at that point, you're stretching it because there's no consistency.
No.
You know?
Yeah, I mean, and the Chiefs actually allow the most receiving yards and the third most receptions to running backs. So that combined with the fact that the Raiders will most likely be playing from behind all game,
You would think it'd be a Jalen Richard game.
It should be a Jalen Richard game.
But as Johnny Gruden has showed us, don't try to predict John Gruden.
Yeah. Moving on to our last game, which is a game I'm very excited about, is the Los Angeles Chargers playing at the Pittsburgh Steelers. We got the again, Melvin Gordon's out, so the running backs here for the Chargers, it's going to be complicated. We don't know if it's going to be Austin Eckler for the majority of the game, if they're going to sprinkle in Justin Jackson. We saw this dude, Detrez Newsome, come in and get 4 carries last week. I think the thing that really stands out here is Austin Eckler getting targeted 10 times last game. I think they kind of knew that they wanted to use Eckler a little more going into last game because they wanted to kind of use Gordon a little less. But, once the game gets started and you're on the goal line and you're going to bring in Melvin Gordon, which is why he had 2 touchdowns last week. But again, he left with that sprained MCL. I think Austin Eckler is going to be the best running back to play here, but again, it's kind of up in the air. And actually, the Steelers defense, they're giving up the 10th fewest fantasy points to running backs. They're also giving up the second fewest receptions and receiving yards to running backs. So that whole Austin Eckler pass catcher thing isn't looking all that great either. So, I mean, I have him in my daily stack just because of, I think, how high scoring this game is going to be. And I think the Chargers are going to be throwing the ball all over the place, but I'm definitely tempering the expectations because of the fact that the Steelers are actually pretty good against running backs. Keenan Allen last week had a touchdown again. Now he's, he went from having a streak of like 8 or 9 games without a touchdown to now having a streak of 2 or 3 games with a touchdown. Mike Williams kind of showed he is he's a wide receiver in a tight end's body. They've kind of been using him as a tight end. His red zone targets have been there, just like I was saying in the beginning of the season. He had 2 touchdowns again. Both of these wide receivers should see more targets with Melvin Gordon out, and with the fact that it's a Sunday night game in Pittsburgh. So that means that Big Ben is going to throw for like 700 yards. He always does good at home in primetime games. So I expect him to be throwing the ball all over the field, just like he did last week. He had 462 passing yards, which is ridiculous, in a loss against the Broncos. I think James Conner, you can obviously play him. He had a disappointing week last week, but this Chargers defense is middle of the pack against the run, so you can definitely fire him up. Excuse me. And then obviously it's the tandem of wide receivers here. It's Antonio Brown, it's Juju. The two of them had combined 30 targets last week. Juju had that one massive 97-yard touchdown catch. I mean, it was ridiculous. What's that? That's 15 and a half.
Oh my God.
Plus,
that was just so dumb.
That's 15 and a half points. Plus if you get, 2 or 3 points on those huge bonus, 50-yard catches and blah, 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 blah. It was a ridiculous play. And then the tight end situation is interesting here because, Vance McDonald is questionable. We don't know if he's going to play. And, Big Ben does like to target the tight end position. Last week it was 9 targets to the tight end. So if Jesse James is the only tight end there, with Vance McDonald missing possibly, I think he's a solid play as well. And if all else fails, you could always just pick up Alejandro Villanueva and maybe they can run another fake field goal and you can catch a touchdown for you. So that does it for the Week 13 preview episode of the Dudes and Beer Fantasy Football Podcast. Again, this is a very important week for anybody that's struggling to maybe get into that last spot for the playoffs, or anybody whose playoffs are about to start this week. So good luck to everybody. Adam, how many leagues do you have the playoffs locked in so far?
You know what? My leagues are so muddled at this point that nobody has playoffs locked.
Oh, man.
So I wish everybody the best of luck, and I pray that your running back does not get ejected with a full quarter to go.
Yeah. So
Or miss the entire game in and of itself. Melvin Gordon and Fournette.
Yeah, that's true. So, all right, let the fantasy gods be cruel to you, your opponents this week. Thanks for listening. Check us out next week.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Dudes and Beer Fantasy Football Podcast. To listen to our episodes or chat with us live, download the official Dudes and Beer app, available on Android and iDevices, or visit us online at dudesandbeer.com. You can also find all of our episodes on breach.tv, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, SoundCloud, or your favorite podcast service. Dudes and Beer is a proud member of the HC Universal family of podcasts. For more about our sponsors, podcasts, and other content, visit hcuniversalnetwork.com or download the free HC Universal Network app. Thanks for listening, everybody. And until next time, drink responsibly.